Hello, 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 beautiful and amazing people. How are you guys doing this evening? I'm super excited to see you guys. Welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. So, what I'm going to be doing tonight is I am going to be teaching you guys how to build wealth the right way using a trust fund. Okay, so a lot of us, we've heard the word trust, but we don't know what it is. We've heard trust fund, but we're not sure. So, I'm here to give you the ins and outs so that you guys can better understand what a trust is, okay? But before we get started and before I jump into the slides, I just want to check the pulse in the room. How are you guys doing? Put it in the chat where you guys tuning in from. I'm so curious to know where you guys are at right now. So I am tuning in from Atlanta, Georgia, but I will be in Miami, Florida tomorrow. So where are you guys at? Brazil. Awesome, Jason. Okay, Jason is in Brazil. I love it. All right,
St.
who
Louis,
else?
Missouri.
Let's see.
St. Louis,
Jason
Missouri.
is in Brazil. Where are you guys tuning in from? Kansas City. Loving it. Okay. Kansas City. Where else? Where else? Where else?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Arizona, North Carolina. I love it. I love it. Okay, so we got people from all over Indiana. Okay, so we have people located all over the US and even the world, right? Jason is in Brazil. So that is awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the wealth building formula so that you can have that time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom, right? So that you can be anywhere in the world, right? So let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Christina Yvette. I am the founder of 7 Ways to Wealth. We're a financial literacy company. So I have actually been a trustee for 11 years. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be educating you from a standpoint of trusteeship. I am not an attorney. I am not a CPA. So I'm not educating you from that standpoint. I'm educating you on how you're able to one, set up your own trust, you're able to operate it, and you're able to protect your assets. Okay. So I'm here to empower you, but I'm also here to educate you so that you can go on and do your research and your due diligence to see if a trust is something that you and your family needs. Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to dive into the presentation, but the way that I actually became a trustee was through nursing and it was through real estate, right? So first I was a registered nurse and I was living paycheck to paycheck and I was working 12-hour shifts. I was working 6 days a week and I was very frustrated. So at that time, I had a 1-year-old son, and I realized that I was not spending time with my son. My son was being raised by my mom, and I was spending more time in the hospital with my patients and my coworkers. So going through that, that frustrated me, and I told myself, I said, well, I can't just keep working like this, right? Because working 5, 6 days a week, 12 hours is exhausting. The next thing is that I'm not raising my baby. And the next thing is that I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Like every single time that I got paid on Friday, I would go and get a cash advance because the money wasn't enough. So, because of that frustration, I told myself, I said, I can't just only depend on my paycheck here in the hospital. There has to be another way. So, I'm driving to work one day, and this guy, his name is Dan Merrill, he's like, do you want to learn how to flip houses? You need to come to my seminar this weekend. So I signed up for his 3-day seminar and I go and I learned so much about real estate that I've never known in my life. That I actually fell in love with real estate, became passionate, and within 6 months, I started my LLC and I bought my first property. So this property was at that time, it was a little 2 bedroom, 1 bath, beat up house that was built in like the 40s. And it was up to me with no experience to be able to renovate this house and sell it, right? And so I had a hard money lender, and the hard money lender, he put 100% of the money up for this house. So can you just believe it? I'm 25 years old, new into real estate, don't have no money, broke. And my hard money lender is like, okay, I'll put 100% of the money up, right? I didn't even have to come to the table with any of my own money. So I asked him, I said, can you be my mentor? And he said, yes, he'll be my mentor. Now, the first thing that he told me to do was, Christina, you need to transfer that property from the LLC to the trust. And I never even knew what a trust was, right? Young, 25 years old, inexperienced, just starting life. So I'm like, what's a trust? So we go down this whole rabbit hole where he teaches me what a trust is, how to set it up, and how to protect the assets and the reason, the importance of a trust, right? So just imagine being 25 years old setting up your trust, right? So that's exactly what I did. And I had to because my mentor, he had $200 million worth of real estate, right? He was his own bank, right? He had a private equity firm where he was a hard money lender and he could lend money to people who needed real estate deals to fund them. So with that being said, I was like, okay, I need to listen to exactly everything that he says. And so I set up the trust, I transfer the LLC I transfer the house from the LLC into the trust so that I could protect the asset because I didn't know what I didn't know. But one thing that I did know is that that house was going to be renovated. Somebody could have had a slip and fall and they could have sued me and they could have taken that property, which was my first property. So I listened, and that property was protected. And eventually I sold that property, right? It was a flip. So I sold that property for $235,000. So just imagine your first deal. You bought it for $89,000, right? You renovated it for less than $50,000 and you sold it for $235,000. I made six figures off of that deal. And when I made six figures off of that deal, I quickly realized that I could establish financial freedom, right? That I didn't have to work for money, that I just made six figures off of one property, right? So when I quickly realized that, I was like, okay, like I'm going to put myself in a position to where I'm not going to continue to trade my time for money. And I am going to learn how to build wealth using the trust in real estate. And that's exactly what I was able to manage to do. So what I want to do is I want to teach you what a trust is and how to use it so that you too can build wealth with it, okay? So we're gonna dive right into the presentation. Let's just get in here. And then after the presentation, if you guys have any questions, you can ask me anything that you would like. So I'll open up the floor for Q&A, okay? So just let me get through the slides and then we will go from there. But I will definitely have questions for you guys, okay? So I hope that you guys will be paying attention. So let's get into this, okay? So now, let's talk about what a trust is, okay? So a lot of us, as I mentioned, we heard the term trust fund. We don't know what it is. Sometimes the word trust fund baby, and we're like, it has a negative connotation, right? So what I want you to know is that a trust is an entity. It is a living, breathing entity, just like you. So you need to know that you are a living, breathing entity, okay? Which means that a trust can do anything and everything that you can do, right? So for example, if you can buy a house, a trust can buy a house. If you can build credit, a trust can build credit. If you can write a book, the trust can also write a book. Okay, so there's no limitations, which means it can already let you know how powerful this entity is. Okay, so I'm here to tell you today that a trust is the most powerful entity in the world. Okay, not just here in America, right? Not in any other, not just in one country or one continent, but in the entire world, right? So all countries, they use trust, okay? So now when it comes to this entity, right, it is what we call a contractual entity, right? Because this entity needs to come into existence somehow. So how is it established? It's established through a contract, okay? So with this contract, right, there are several different parties involved in this contract. There are several different sections to the contract, okay? So there's two sections that I want you to know of right now. The first one is the declaration where you're declaring what it is and what it is not. So you're declaring, hey, I am establishing a trust by contract. I am not establishing a partnership, a joint venture, a limited liability company, or a corporation. Okay. So in the contract, you have to spell it out in black and white. And then the next part is the bylaws. The bylaws are the rules and regulations of how you want the trust to be ran, right? Those are what we call the terms and conditions. Okay. And they're vitally important, and I'll touch on it later, right? But with this trust, right, you're going to set it up for a certain amount of years. So typically you'll set it up for anywhere between 1 to 100 years, right? The trust is designed to outlive you, okay? So you want to typically set it up for the longest amount of time possible so that you can have the least amount of renewals, okay? So now let's talk about the different parties involved in this contract, okay? So you have the grantor. The grantor is the creator of the trust, and the grantor is creating the trust for the benefit of someone else or something else. Now, that someone else is the beneficiary, okay? So with the grantor, one, they are creating and establishing the trust with someone else, which is the trustee, and they're placing the first asset into the trust, okay? Now, the next party that I want you to be aware of is the trustee, right? So the trustee is the controller of the trust. That is the individual who is going to be controlling the assets, managing the funds, and what we call the fiduciary, okay? So they have a fiduciary responsibility to carry out all of those tasks that you set forth in the bylaws, right? So everything that you put in the bylaws of the do's and don'ts, or how you want the trust to operate, meaning the terms and conditions, the trustee is the one who has to carry out all those terms and conditions. And they do it for the beneficiary. Now, the beneficiary is the inheritor of the trust. That is the individual that's going to be receiving the assets that are inside of the trust once the trust is terminated, okay? So the trust can expire, remember. So once that 100 years is up, the trust will expire, and it's up to the trustee, whoever is serving at that time, to be able to renew the trust so that the trust can then be extended for another 100 years, okay? So the beneficiary, they're going to be receiving gifts from the trust. They're going to be receiving distributions from the trust. And ultimately, once the trust is dissolved, all of those assets go to the beneficiary, okay? So let's continue on. So now that we understand the different parties involved with a trust, let's now go into the different types of trust, okay? Now, I will tell you that there are hundreds of different types of trusts. You need to choose the right trust for you, your family, your business, okay? Now, I'm going to give you a few different categories, and every single trust falls between these two categories, okay? So let's dive in. Now, the first category that I want to tell you guys is express versus implied. So an express trust is a written trust. That means that it's in black and white, it's on a contract, it's on paper, right? It's physical, you can touch it, and you will definitely sign it, right? So it'll have your wet ink signature on it, okay? So that is what an express trust is versus an implied trust. An implied trust is where you had that verbal agreement between the grantor and the trustee, but it stayed verbal, it stayed oral, it never went in, it never got transcribed into paper, right? So it never became expressed, okay? So those are the first two categories. The second category is simple versus complex. So a simple trust is where the trustee is, they have to go ahead and distribute all the funds that are inside of the trust. So the trust can't hold trust funds, okay? So 100% distribution is required. And a complex trust means that it's longer in nature, so there's more terms and provisions inside of that trust, but it's not required for the trustee to be able to distribute all of the money that's inside of the trust, okay? Which is advantageous to the trust, for the trust to hold money for the assets, okay? So the next category that I want to give you guys is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So discretionary trust is where the trustee has full discretion to be able to make decisions for the trust that's not inside of the contract. So let me give you a quick example. Let's just say that you as a trustee said, hey, let's go buy Bitcoin tomorrow. But if it's not inside of the contract, then you can't buy Bitcoin. But if it is inside of the contract, right? And if it is inside of the contract, then you can, right? So that's what we mean when we're describing discretionary versus non-discretionary, okay? So discretionary means that you have the full discretion to be able to make those decisions, even if it's not in the contract. And non-discretionary means that you cannot make those decisions for the trust if it's not inside of the contract, okay? So if it doesn't say crypto, you can't do it, okay? So let me give you the next set of categories. So the next category that I want to share with you guys is statutory versus non-statutory. So every single state has its own statutes or codes, okay? So those statutes are the laws, right? And so these statutes and codes for a statutory trust are embedded inside of the contract, which means that with a statutory trust, that trust is going to be publicly registered with the state. So that means that anyone is able to look up the trust. And that means that they can see your contract, they can see who your beneficiaries are, they can see all the assets that you have inside of the trust, okay? And so that's the first thing. And it's limited to where you can only use it in that one state. So if you set it up in Texas, you can only use it in Texas, right? Versus a non-statutory trust means that there's no state statutes or codes embedded inside of the contract, which means that it's not required to be registered in the public records and that you can use it in the entire nation and not just in one particular state where you decide to set it up. Okay, so that's extremely powerful for you to use it in all of the US plus the US territories like the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Guam, things like that, right? Places like that. So the last category that I want to give you is revocable versus irrevocable. Now, when we are talking about revocability or irrevocability, we're only referring to one party. The one party that we're referring to is the grantor. So what we're saying when we are just referring to a revocable, what we're saying is that the grantor has the power to revoke. So what can they revoke, right? So let's talk about it. Well, they can go ahead and revoke the positions, meaning that they can remove the trustees and the beneficiaries, right? If they were to place assets, they could revoke those assets. If they wanted to terminate the trust, then they can revoke the entire trust, right? So typically the grantor has all the power, right? And typically the grantor is going to serve as the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. So with the revocable trust, that individual is serving all three positions within that trust contract, okay? So now this revocable trust is actually seen as their alter ego, right? And so now that revocable trust is going to be operating from the grantor's social security number. So unfortunately, if somebody is going after the grantor, they can go after the trust. So your assets are not protected with a revocable trust, okay? Which is so vital for you to know, especially if you want to set up a trust for asset protection, okay? So what ends up happening is if they decide, meaning a creditor, so if a creditor decides that they want to go after the grantor, and let's just say that they decide to sue the grantor and there's a judgment or anything like that, right? What can happen is if that type of trust goes into the court system, then the judge can pierce through a revocable trust, right? And that will automatically turn it into a product of the public records for everyone to see, and they'll pierce through it, and it could ultimately end up being dismantled, okay? Which once again results in your assets not being protected. So let's talk about the other category, which is irrevocable. So when we are talking about irrevocable, this is what we're saying, right? So we're saying that only one party has irrevocability, which is the grantor. So what we're saying is that with the grantor, because they have irrevocability, they can only serve as the grantor. The grantor is not going to have any power or any control. So the grantor cannot be the trustee. The grantor cannot be the beneficiary, okay? So they can only be the grantor. And what we're saying is that the grantor cannot remove the trustee, cannot remove the beneficiary, cannot terminate the trust, and cannot take back property that they have placed into the trust, okay? So, because the grantor has no power and no control, the irrevocable trust is seen as a separate entity, and the irrevocable trust is actually going to be operating off of its own 9-digit number, which is the EIN, versus operating off of the grantor's Social Security. Okay. So because this is the case, your assets are protected, because if anyone tries to go after the grantor or the trustee, they cannot pierce through the trust. They cannot take the trust to court. So ultimately your assets are protected, which is what you want. Okay. So now that you guys better understand what the different types of trust are, let's talk about how to actually create a trust. Okay. Now, the first thing that I want you to do is, number one, you want to determine what type of trust is best for you, your family, your business. Okay. Now, with that being said, when we are talking about what you want, let's just say when we're talking about like the best type of trust for you, right? You want that trust to be bulletproof. And if you're wanting a bulletproof trust that's going to hold up in court, that's going to fully protect your assets, and that's going to last the test of time, then you want that type of trust to fall within these categories. Okay. So remember, in the previous slide, I gave you several different categories. So that type of trust needs to be expressed. It needs to be complex in nature. It needs to be discretionary. It needs to be non-statutory, and it needs to be irrevocable. Okay, so it needs to fall within those 5 categories so that it can be bulletproof, and it won't be pierced in court, and your assets will be protected. Okay. So now that you've done your due diligence and you figured out, okay, yes, I need to go ahead and establish a trust, let's move on to step 2. So in step 2, you want to determine the name for the trust. So just like when a baby is born, right, and you name it, it's the same thing with the trust. Okay, so this trust is now coming into existence. You have to give it a name. Now, there's one mistake that I see a lot of people make when they go and set up their trust. They end up naming the trust after themselves, which is the biggest mistake that you can make. So if your name is John Smith, you name the trust the John Smith Trust. Well, excuse me, John Smith, that's a dead giveaway. I thought that you set up this trust for privacy. I thought that you set up this trust so that creditors wouldn't try to go after your trust, right? If they're trying to go after you. So why would you name the trust after yourself, right? So please do not make the mistakes that the other people are making out here in society. Okay. The second thing that I need you to know of when you are preparing to name your trust is that you don't have to have the word trust in the actual name. So a lot of people think of it like a business, to where if you're running a limited liability company, you have to put LLC at the end, or you have to put corp or co or corporation at the end, right? Well, a trust doesn't work that way, okay? So you don't have to have the word trust, which is good, right? Because we want to practice obscurity, right? We want it to be very challenging for people to start digging and skip tracing and looking for, well, who is behind this trust, right? You don't want them to even know that it is a trust, right? Just allow them to see an entity's name. Okay. Now, when you're naming your trust, right? A lot of people, they like to use the words family or legacy or dynasty, right? So you can use those. You can use phrases like estate or holdings or limited, right? So just consider that when you are going to name your trust. Now, I'll just give you a quick example, right? So you see this plant behind me, right? This is my favorite plant in the whole entire world. It's called a monstera, right? So let's just say that I'm going to go ahead and open up my trust, right? So I'm going to use a unique name that is not going to directly be tied to me, okay? So obviously I'm not going to use Christina Yvette Trust. So what I'm going to call it is the Monstera Estate, right? And so now that they're seeing the Monstera Estate owns that property, right? They don't know who is associated with the Monstera Estate, right? So just an example, okay? So now that you have named your trust, you need to appoint the different parties that are going to be associated with the trust, okay? So remember, the parties are grantor, trustee, beneficiary, okay? So go ahead and determine who the grantor is going to be, determine who the trustee is going to be, determine who the beneficiaries are. So usually those are your next of kin or maybe your children, right? Grandchildren, things of that nature. And determine who the successor trustee is, right? Now, the successor trustee is an individual that's going to take over for the trustee. So let's just say that you appointed yourself as the trustee, right? So if you appointed yourself as the trustee, you need to have a succession plan already in place to know that if anything happens to the trustee, meaning that the trustee becomes incapacitated, the trustee transitions, or the trustee doesn't want to operate the trust anymore and they decide to resign. If any of those three things happen, right, and there's only one trustee, then the trust becomes inoperative, and you don't want that to happen. So what you want to do is you want to appoint someone as the successor who's going to take over and pick up where you left off if you were the trustee, okay? Now let's move on to step 3. So in step 3, we're going to actually create the trust agreement. So that means that you're going to express everything that was verbally agreed on. You're going to express it onto that contract, right? And so that contract is then going to have all the terms and conditions, all the rules and regulations, or what we call provisions. Now, one provision that I want to highlight to you is spendthrift provisions. So what is a spendthrift? A spendthrift is an individual, more than likely it's the beneficiary, okay, that is acting as a spendthrift, meaning that they want to spend all of the money. They want to dissipate the wealth. They want to dismantle the financial structure of the trust, right? And so you don't want to allow that. Right. And so that's why sometimes when you hear the word trust fund baby, right, it gets a negative connotation because of those individuals, the spendthrifts. Okay. And so you want to put rules and regulations in place in order to prevent those spendthrifts. So, for example, some type of provisions that you can place inside of your trust agreement is an age restriction, right? So let's just say that your beneficiary is entitled to $10,000 a month, right? So if you put an age restriction, you're saying that if the beneficiary is 2 years old, they don't need $10,000 a month, right? But if they're 30 years old, then they do need $10,000 a month, right? So you can put an age restriction. Let's just say that you decided to restrict it to 25. So you're saying that if you are below 25, then you'll get a certain percentage of that 10,000. And if you have reached the age of 25, then you're eligible for your full distribution, okay? Another restriction that we put in place is an education restriction. So we'll say, hey, budgeting or finance or accounting or apprenticeship or mentorship is required, right? Or if you want to say a college degree, a bachelor's degree, a doctorate's, right? Whatever you want, you can put an education requirement in there. And if they don't meet that requirement, they're not eligible for their distribution. Now, what you can do is also place a distribution restriction on there to restrict what they can and cannot spend the money on. So now you're heading into another direction to where you're controlling the money from the grave. And you need to do this because at the end of the day, you're the one that established the legacy. You're the one that created the estate. And you need to be able to guide the future beneficiaries and let them know what they should and should not spend the money on. So you can do things like tell them, hey, the funds need to be allocated to real estate, education, your living expenses, let's just say life insurance, right? Whatever it is, a business endeavors, investments, stocks, anything like that, right? Crypto. So you can tell them that. And then you can also identify what they cannot spend the money on. So you've already let them know, hey, this is what you can spend it on, and this is what you cannot. So you cannot spend it on lottery tickets. You can't go gambling to the Hard Rock Casino, right? You can't spend it on, let's just say like tobacco, right? Or alcohol, right? Or lavish parties or lavish trips. You can go to the extent like whatever extent that you would like, okay? But you want to go ahead and put things in there that you know that are going to benefit the beneficiaries in the long run, okay? So now that you have created your contract, you finalized your bylaws, you are ready to go, we're going to move on to step 4. So in step 4, you're going to get your trust notarized, okay? So now when it comes to notarization, there's 2 signatures that are required. It's the grantor signature and it's the first trustee signature. Both of those signatures need to obviously be obviously they need to be present in front of a notary, and then notary is going to go ahead and witness those signatures. Then the notary is going to sign as that witness and place their seal. Once that seal is placed on that document, it becomes legalized, and now you are able to operate the trust. So now that you're able to operate the trust, you want to now fund the trust, okay? So we're going to move on to step 5, where you're going to open up that trust fund bank account, okay? So when you hear the word trust fund, right, you are referring to the bank account that is owned by the trust, okay? So let's talk about this for a few minutes. So you funding the trust is you opening up that trust fund and actually putting money in it, okay? So you need to actually determine which bank you want to establish a banking relationship with, okay? Now, it doesn't only have to be a bank, it could be any financial institution that offers a trust account. So I'm here to tell you that not every single bank or credit union or brokerage offers trust accounts. So you have to do your research and your due diligence to figure out which bank in your area is going to offer a trust account, okay? So now the types of accounts that you're going to be getting are checking accounts, savings accounts, money market accounts, cash management accounts, and then your traditional brokerage accounts, okay? And so it's going to be in the name of the trust. And so what you're going to do is you are going to go to the bank, and you can either do this through online, depending on the bank, or you can do it in person at the branch. Now, you're going to bring pertinent information with you, okay? So one, you're obviously going to bring identification to prove that you're the trustee or the authorized person that's able to open up a trust account for the trust. You're going to bring what we call a certificate of trust. The certificate of trust is proof of identity that the trust exists. So just like how you're able to prove your existence through that state ID that has your name, your height, your weight, an ID number, it's the same thing with the trust. So the trust has a certificate, and it's able to prove its existence through the certificate. The certificate has the name of the trust, when it was established, which is, the same thing as a date of birth, who the grantors and trustees are, some very pertinent provisions for the trust, what the EIN number is, things of that nature, right? The address, all of these very important details, okay? So you're going to provide the certificate of trust, and then you're going to provide that EIN confirmation letter. So the reason why we obtain an EIN with the IRS is so that we can have banking privileges, okay? So it's very challenging and almost impossible for you to get a bank account for the trust without an EIN number, right? And if you don't have a bank account for the trust, then you have to find alternative ways of where you're going to house those trust funds, okay? So let's move on to number 6. Now, after you have funded the trust, right? And one thing that I want to mention before we move forward is that every single financial institution is different. So when you're opening up this trust fund account, right, you will either want to put the minimum or put whatever desired amount that you want. So let's just say that the bank's minimum is $100, then you'll put the $100. Or if you say, hey, well, I want to put $1,000, then you can put $1,000. Now, every single banks have their own minimums, okay? So some are 100, some are 500, some are 1,000, some are 3,000, 5,000. It depends on the financial institution and the type of account that you're opening up for the trust, okay? So let's move on to number 6. So in number 6, this is the biggest mistake that I see everyone make when they are setting up their trust. They never legally transfer their assets into the trust. I don't want you to make that mistake. So there's two things that you have to do. Let me give you a quick example. Let's just say that you have your primary residence, right? Because our primary residence is our biggest asset, our most expensive asset, where we have our money tied the most, right? It's our most expensive bill, right? So that's the thing that you want to protect, to be honest with you, right? Is your primary residence, right? So the primary residence, when you bought it, they gave you a deed, okay? And so that deed is representing your ownership interest in that property. So now when it comes to the trust, one, you have to list it as an asset inside of the trust agreement. Then two, you have to redeed that property legally. So that means that you have to go ahead and create a new deed, all right? And you're going to have the deed over that property from your personal name into the name of the trust. And now that you have it in the name of the trust, right, you have to get that deed notarized, and then it needs to be recorded with the county recorder's office. And then at that time, once they record the new deed, then it's going to represent on the public records that that property is owned by a trust. Now, this is the biggest mistake that people make, because they'll only list that asset in the trust and they'll never do the conveyance, okay? They'll never switch the deed, right? And then 10 years later, this whole entire time, they thought that their house was in a trust, right? So there are many different steps that you need to take in order to properly transfer your assets into the trust and for those assets to be fully protected by the trust, okay? So now the reason why you want to actually set up a trust is for asset protection, right? You want to protect that house, and for privacy, right? You don't even want anyone to know that you're associated with the house, right? So those are the main two reasons. Now, what can a trust protect you from? It can protect you from bankruptcy, from divorce, from foreclosures, from heavy taxations, from lawsuits, from probate, right? So we'll just talk about a few. So let's talk about divorce really quickly. So divorce is a transfer of wealth, right? Unfortunately. So sometimes one spouse will end up with everything and the other spouse will end up with nothing, right? And so included in the divorce proceedings is all of your assets and all of your liabilities. So everything that you have in your personal name, right? The 401k, the pension, right? All the credit cards, things of that nature. Now, the beautiful thing about a trust is that you are not the trust is not you, which means that if you're getting a divorce, right? And let's just say that you had a trust from a couple years ago, and in that trust, there's a house, there's, 100,000 in cash and a car, right? That trust cannot be pulled into this divorce because that trust is separate from you. The trust is not getting a divorce, you are. Right. And so anything and everything to do with that trust cannot be pulled into your divorce, which is beautiful because you want to protect your assets from situations like this. Okay. I know personally because I'm divorced. Okay. So number four, right? Let's just go over heavy taxes because a lot of us, we are giving away half of our income, right? Especially if you're in places like New York, especially if you're in places like California, right? And so what you want to do is you want to be able to set up a certain trust to where that trust is going to help you reduce your tax liability, right? So depending on the different types of trust that you can set up, right? The IRS will allow you to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to a trust, right? And what will happen then is that you're only going to be taxed on 40% versus the whole 100%, right? So that means that one, you can contribute that money somewhere else, and then you can be saving thousands of dollars and then thousands of dollars on taxes, right? And that money can be allocated to investments, right? To assets, right? So just think about that. So another thing that I want you to be aware of is that the IRS taxes you when you die. A lot of people don't know that, right? But there is something called a death tax, and I want you to look it up, okay? And so you want to be very mindful of that because the death tax is going to go after any assets or cash that you have in your personal name, okay? And the trust can help you avoid that type of tax, okay? Now, let's talk about lawsuits because we live in the United States of America. And let's just be honest, the United States is a very suit-friendly country, okay? Everyone is out here getting sued and everybody wants to sue you, to be honest with you, right? So your brother and sister, they want to sue you. Your neighbor wants to sue you. Your employer wants to sue you. Your employee wants to sue you. Your tenants, your customers, your clients, everyone, okay? And so that's how you need to be walking around thinking. But we are doing the opposite. We're thinking that we're not going to get sued. And so we're not preparing for a lawsuit, right? So I talk to hundreds of people per week, right? And people like they just that's just not what they're thinking, right? And so there's been a couple of times where I'll talk to someone and they're like, yeah, I've known about trust for this long and that long, and then 6 months later they're like, oh, I have to set up a trust now, I'm getting sued, right? And so it happens out of nowhere, right? So just be mindful of that. Now, let's just say that I want to give you a quick example. Let's just say that you are a business owner, right? And you are operating an LLC, right? And I love LLCs, right? But a lot of us, we think that the LLC is the end all be all when it's not. So what does the term LLC, what does that abbreviation stand for? So you guys tell me, come off mute, let me know what you think it stands for.
Limited
Limited
liability.
liability company.
Limited liability company.
Yes, you absolutely correct. Limited liability company. I love that. Okay, perfect. So now that we know that it stands for limited liability company, right? My question to you is you hear it in the word, right? So the company has what? Come on.
Ability.
Limited liability.
Limitation.
Okay, limitations. Okay. So now if the company has limited liability for whatever happens in the company, who do you think has the other portion of that limited liability?
You know,
Thank you. Okay, see, we got some geniuses in the call. Okay, he said you. Yes, right. So now my next question is when you set up that LLC, right? For my business owners and my entrepreneurs, when you set up that LLC, did you list yourself as the owner?
don't set up an LLC.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And
Set
that's
up the
what we,
corporation.
yeah, and that's what we all do. And we make that mistake, right? We make that mistake of setting up the LLC and putting ourselves as the owner. But now I need you to know that if anything happens with that LLC, they're going to come after you. You didn't know that, right? So let me just give you a quick example, right? Let's just say that you're running a candle company, right? And I love candles. I'm actually burning one right now. So you running a candle business, right? And a customer is now, contacting you and they're like, hey, my house burned down because of your candle. And you're like, what? So now I need you to know that an LLC is a statutory entity. That means that that customer or client can go to the Secretary of State. They can put the name of your LLC and everything will come up, meaning the address, the phone number, the email, the EIN, your name, your address, everything comes up on the Secretary of State's website because it's a part of the public records. And because that is a statutory entity, right? You went to the state in order to set up that LLC. So now they know who to go after. So now your LLC has a lawsuit, right? And let's just say that the judge decides, yep, it was your candle that burned down her house, right? And so now you have a judgment. The LLC has a judgment for $500,000 for that house, right? But the LLC doesn't have $500,000, right? So what do you think is going to happen? Well, I'm here to tell you that in the event that that LLC can't cover that judgment, then the judge can decide to pierce through the corporate veil. If the judge decides to pierce through the corporate veil is that little itty bitty piece of protection that you thought you had. So if the judge decides to pierce through it, then that means that the judge is going to go after the owner of the LLC, which means that the judge is going to go after you, right? And now what's going to happen? Well, the judge is going to go after you personally because you put your personal name as the owner or quote unquote authorized member of that LLC. So now what do you have personally? Well, they're going to garnish your entire bank account. Every single bank account that is attached to your name and social security is going to be garnished, right? If you have any 1099s or W-2s, they're going to garnish those wages. And then they're going to start to seize assets. Any assets that you have in your personal name that's attached to your social security, meaning the house, the car, the artwork, right? The jewelry, whatever it is that you have, right? The 401k, anything, right? So they will go and seize those assets, right? And that is not what you want, right? You don't want someone knocking at your door and trying to kick you out of your own home where you and your children live, right? And so you cannot, I'm here to tell you today, right? I made the same mistake. I had set up my LLC in my personal name until my mentor told me otherwise. I'm here to tell you today that you cannot, right? You do not want to be liable for that company. You do not want to be the owner on paper. You want to have separation between you and that LLC. And that separation is going to be a trust. So you want the trust to own that LLC. You want the trust to be the authorized member. You want the trust to have 100% liability for that LLC, not you. So we've been doing things backwards and we're not structured the right way. But don't worry, because now that we know better, we're going to do better. Okay. So in the event that they're suing your LLC, they're not going to come after you because you're not the owner. They're going to go after the trust. And the trust is acting as a holding company, right? And so the trust doesn't have $500,000 just sitting in there, right? So it's very powerful for you to put yourself in a position to where you have that trust be the owner of the LLC because the trust is operating as a holding company holding that LLC, right? All of us, like if we are business owners and entrepreneurs, that is how we're providing for our families, right? And so we need to be able to protect that asset. A lot of you guys are not looking at your business as an asset when it is, right? Where does the bread and butter come from? It comes from the LLC, right? So we have to be able to protect the LLC in events like this, right? So let me just quickly show you something real quick. Hold on, let me get there. Let's see, let's get back to the slides. So I just want to show you a quick video of an individual that went through what I was just describing.
Just a quick story of why I'm here. I was sued. I lost everything. And when I say everything, I'm talking about a $700,000 house. I'm talking about 4 vehicles. I'm talking about my bank account. I'm talking about my life savings. I believed in having 6 months of expenses put up, saved up just in case anything happened, lost a career and stuff like that. All of that was gone. And there was no protection for me. Then I had my 3rd bout with cancer. I haven't had any income since 2020, since COVID. As I told you, I think yesterday, I've been looking for a way to protect myself because I have children that are going to depend on me. So I would encourage anyone that would listen to anything that has been taught and said by you, please, 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 if you work hard to gain assets, do whatever you can do to protect your assets. Why do you think they've hid this from us for so long? Why do you think they were the only ones that were saying trust fund babies? It was because they were the only ones who were privileged to know this, who was privy to this knowledge. Now we have it through Christina. And I thank you for your level of knowledge and for not being a gatekeeper and for giving us what we need to know in order to make this happen. So please, 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 if you endeavor to get anything in this world and to keep anything in this world, please, please, please protect it. Get your trusts. And I have no reason other than my knowledge and what I've been through. But the only reason I'm here is because I've been through it. So I would encourage anyone.
So what I want to tell you guys is do not wait until you are getting sued in order to protect yourself from a lawsuit, okay? So now let's talk about that primary residence that you have, right? Let's just say, okay, this is my question to you. The house that you live in right now today, right? Your primary residence is in your personal name. If you did not wake up tomorrow, how do you expect that house to be transferred from your personal name to your son or your daughter or your spouse or your next of kin? So come off mute, let me know, how is that going to happen? How do you anticipate that's going to happen? Come off mute, come off mute.
It's not.
Yeah, Scott is just
It's not
brutally.
gonna
What'd you say?
I was saying the same thing. It's not gonna happen.
So ultimately, Linda has something to say.
I was gonna say a TODD, transfer upon death deed.
That's a good one. Stella?
I was going to say that it's not possible, so it's better to wake up early enough.
Right. So it is impossible, right? So it's impossible for us to be able to do it because we thought we had all the time in the world, right? We thought that tomorrow was promised, and tomorrow is not promised. I'm here to tell you, right? Tomorrow is not promised. So if you don't wake up tomorrow, there's no way for you to transfer that deed. So that means that automatically it's going to take a judge, right? A judge to be able to decide if your son or your daughter or whoever you want, if they are going to receive the house, right? If that deed is going to be transferred. That judge doesn't know you. That judge doesn't know your son or your daughter, but you've left it up to them. Why? Because you didn't have your affairs in order, right? At the end of the day, you knew that you wanted your son or your daughter to have the house, but instead you kept everything in your personal name, right? And I'm here to tell you that you're doing your son, your daughter, your children, you're doing them a disservice. So this is my disclaimer to you. Our children are losing their inheritance. Why? Because of us, right? Because we haven't set up things the right way. They're losing their inheritance, right? The properties are being auctioned off on the county steps.
Every day.
Every day. Thank you, Stella. Every day. Right? And so we have to be able to take back control, right? Because we don't want this to happen anymore. We're doing our family a disservice by just not having our paperwork in order. So let me just give you an example of what it looks like, okay? And now this whole entire process is called the probate process, right? So what ends up happening is, let's just say that you have a house, you have a car, and you have a bank account with $100,000, right? And you did not wake up tomorrow. Everything was in your personal name, right? $100,000 in the bank account, right? Everything's in your personal name. So what's going to happen first is the state where you're a resident, they're going to create an estate for you. So they create a living estate for a dead person. And then they transfer the house, the car, and the cash into the living estate. And then the living estate now has to go to probate court, right? And so the living estate is now in probate court. And so the estate is going to be represented by a probate attorney and is going to end up in court, right? And so the first thing that happens is the judge is going to first pay off your liabilities, meaning that let's just say you had credit cards, right? The judge is going to pay off those credit cards, right? You had a student loan from 30 years ago, right? A personal loan, home loan, all of these things, right? So the judge is going to pay those things off, right? And one thing that a lot of people don't think about is the medical bills, right? Can you just imagine how much medical bills you're going to rack up at the end of life? Exactly. Nobody ever thinks about this. You're not walking around here thinking, oh, at the end of life, I might be sitting in the ICU for a week. Just imagine that you were sitting in the ICU for a week before the end of life. You already racked up $250,000 in medical bills. And a lot of people think, and I know, remember, I was a nurse, right? I was in the ICU. So you already racked up $250,000 in medical bills. And what's going to happen is a lot of people is like, oh, well, I have health insurance. Well, guess what? Your health insurance now just became a creditor, right? There was a copay involved. They're not getting paid. They're coming after your estate, right? Or if you have Medicare and Medicaid, people think, oh, I have Medicare and Medicaid. Guess what? They want to be reimbursed. I'm here to tell you right now that Medicare and Medicaid, they're the first in line to go after your estate and to be reimbursed, okay? And so what's going to happen is if you don't have enough cash, remember we only had $100,000. We only had $100,000 in cash, but yet our medical bills is $250, right? So if you don't have enough cash to cover your liabilities or those bills, that debt, and cover those creditors, then guess what's going to happen? The judge is going to start to liquidate your assets, meaning the judge is going to put your house for sale. So I want you to go onto Zillow and Realtor.com to see how many houses for sale that are in probate, right? So the judge is going to sell your house, sell your car, so that they can reimburse Medicare, Medicaid, the hospital, the credit card companies, everyone, right? And so you don't want that to happen because at the end of the day, you have children. You want your children to receive the house and the car and the cash. But now, because you didn't have your affairs in order, guess what? Your children are, one, they're fighting each other. Or two, they're fighting the court system to keep mom's house, to keep dad's house, instead of grieving in peace. So now, let's just say that they liquidated your house, right? So they sold your house on the market and they paid off Medicaid, right? So now after everything is said and done, meaning that after your estate has covered the attorney fees, the court fees, and all of your liabilities, whatever is left over is what your children get. Your children are getting the leftovers. And that is very unfortunate because that's not what we want. That's not why we work so hard. We work so hard for the house, so hard to have that $100,000 in cash just sitting in our checking account. But yet, because we didn't have a succession plan, because we didn't have our affairs in order, because we didn't have a trust, now they get the leftovers, right? And so that's not what you want. So now I just showed you what you don't want, right? And so I'm here to tell you that probate is inevitable. We're all going to go through probate, right? All of us. If you living and breathing, you're going to go through probate. Unless there's only one way to avoid probate. Only one. The only way to avoid probate is by having a trust. That trust is not going to be pulled into the probate process. That trust is not going to be pulled into court. That trust is going to protect everything that you have inside of it. So let's just say that you decided, Christina, I'm going to get my affairs in order, right? And you decided, okay, I know that I want my children to have the house, the car, and the cash. So let me set up my trust estate now while I'm living. I'm not going to let the state of Georgia do it when I'm dead. Okay? So you set up your estate and you transferred the house into the trust. You transferred the car into the trust. And then you did a wire transfer and you transfer that $100,000 into the trust fund account. Now you don't have anything in your personal name, right? You don't have a house in your name and attached to your social. You don't have the car or the cash that's in the bank account. And you didn't wake up tomorrow. Well, guess what? Your successor trustee is going to pick up where you left off. Your successor trustee is going to now operate the trust. Your children get to grieve in peace because they don't have to go through the court process. They don't have to go to probate. And they get to benefit from the trust because the trust has cash. That is one, the cash is accumulating. Two, the cash is earning dividends, right? The cash is working. And then it has a property that's generating cash flow. So your children get to benefit from the trust and they get to grieve in peace and avoid that entire probate process. And all of the debt that you had at the end of life, meaning the student loans, credit cards, and medical bills, all of that debt is discharged and it dies with you. Those creditors cannot come after your children. Those creditors can only go after things that's in your name and your social. So why do you think that when we're out here in society, they're constantly asking us for our name and our social? You have to put your name and social on everything, right? If you want to enroll in school, if you want a job, if you want to vote, everything, if you want to buy a house, everything, name and social, name and social, name and social. Why? It's a tracking system, right? They need to be able to track you, right? They need to know, what does he own? How much money is he generating on the W-2 and the 1099s, right? They want to know. But then, once again, that's detrimental for you because now they're able to track everything that you have associated with your name and social. They know what to take. So you want to be able to have your affairs in order so that your children don't have to go through the probate process. So that's a beautiful thing that a trust is able to protect you from that, okay? So let's move on. Let me dive right back into the slides and then we will go into Q&A, you guys. So let's see here. All right, so let's talk about the wealth building formula, okay? This is my favorite thing to talk about, and this is exactly what you came for tonight, okay? So I want to teach you how to build wealth the right way using a trust, okay? Now, what I will say is I have three pillars here. I have structure, I have credit, and I have invest, okay? Let's start with structure. So when it comes to structure, one thing that I need you to know is that if you don't have a trust within your structure, then you need to get restructured. The second thing I need you to know is that everyone should have a for-profit and a nonprofit within their structure. So let's start at the very top with a business trust. Now, remember, we talked about the LLCs with our business owners and our entrepreneurs on the call, right? Now, when I was giving you the example about a trust owning your LLC, I was referring to the business trust, okay? So the business trust, you can set it up in two ways. You can either set it up as a traditional business if you don't have an LLC, then you can set up the business trust and start operating, right? If you have a retail store, if you're doing real estate, if you're doing e-commerce, whatever you're doing, okay? Or you can set it up as a holding company, right? And so that means that it is going to be non-operational. So that means that it doesn't offer any products or services. and that the sole purpose and intent for that trust that's acting as a holding company is to hold the LLC. So now we have the business trust that's holding the LLC, okay? And so you're going to have to do an amendment to the articles of organization when you first set up that LLC, and you're gonna have to remove yourself and add the business trust. So now the Secretary of State, they processed everything, and guess what? Your LLC is now owned by a business trust, right? So your name is nowhere on the paperwork. People don't know that you're associated with that business. You're no longer liable, okay? Which is beautiful. So now let's just say that the LLC generated $100,000. That $100,000 is going to the business trust, okay? And so now it's at the business trust. And the thing that I like about trust is that you spend the money first and you taxed on the leftovers, okay? So that's just the way that we want, right? Versus how we are taxed, right? So us as individuals, guess what? We're taxed first, and then we're given the leftovers, right? And so you need to be operating entities like this where you get to spend the money first, and then whatever's left over is what you get taxed, okay? So it's a different ball game. Now, when it comes to the trust, right? Let's just say that our operating expenses, we're going to spend the money first. So whatever our operating expenses are, whatever it costs in order to operate the business, right? Let's just say that it costs $30,000. So we're going to write off $30,000, right, out of that $100,000. And now we got $70,000 that's left, right? And so we are going to have to pay taxes on that $70,000, right? And so the tax range is anywhere between 10% upwards of 37% for a trust, depending on the income, okay? Now, that's kind of high. So the thing that I love about a trust, this is only a trust can do this, okay? And this is my favorite part about a trust, right? Is that a trust can actually distribute that money. Right. And so if the trust distributes that money, then the trust doesn't have to pay taxes on it because it distributed it. The money's gone. Okay. So the trust is going to distribute that money to the beneficiaries. Okay. So let's talk about it. So $100,000 came in, 30,000 was written off as operating expenses, and then 70,000 was distributed to the beneficiary. So we are going to make the beneficiary of the business trust, we're going to make it the family trust. Why? Remember, right? If we're business owners and entrepreneurs, the bread and butter is coming from the business, and we need that money in order to support our family. So that business trust, the beneficiary has to be the family trust so that money can flow from the business to the family, okay? So now that 70,000 is going straight to the family trust. So now out of the 100,000 that we had, 30 went to operating expenses, 70 went to the family trust, which is the beneficiary. So that means we got $0 left. So you're being taxed 0 on 0, right? So that means you have a 0% tax liability. You're done paying taxes for the business trust. All right. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to move to the family trust. Now the family trust is for everything dealing personal. Okay. Business trust is for business. Family trust is for personal things. So for example, the assets that you're going to have in the family trust are your primary residence, a vehicle, you have an insurance policy, you have your jewelry, your handbags, heirlooms, antiques, anything like that, right? Equipment, stuff like that, right? So that's what you're going to put inside of the family trust. And then your children are going to be the beneficiaries of the family trust. Okay, your children or your next of kin if you don't have any children. Okay. So now remember, 70,000 went from the business trust to the family. So now the family trust has received $70,000 in income. The family trust is a for-profit entity. The family trust has to pay taxes on that 70,000, right? Remember our range is 10 to 37%, right? So now the beautiful thing about the trust is that we spend the money first and we're taxed on the leftovers. So what does it cost, or what does it look like for you to operate your family? Well, you have mortgage, you have rent, you have car note, you have gas, you have groceries, you have kids' tuition, you have insurance policies, you have all of these things that need to be paid out. So let's just say that it costs about $60,000, right? So out of the 60,000 that you deduct, right? So you deduct 60,000 out of the 70, right? And so that means that you only have $10,000 that's left. So now this $10,000, you will easily pay 10% on the 10,000, which is only $1,000, right? Or what you can do is you can do a contribution, right? So one, I just showed you a distribution from the business trust to the family. And now from the family trust, you're going to do a contribution. Okay, it's going to be called a charitable contribution, or what we call a donation to your tax exempt nonprofit trust. Okay, so that's your charitable trust that you want to use for philanthropic endeavors. Okay, and so you're going to, instead of you paying taxes, you're going to donate it. Why? Because it's legally you're able to do that, right? So it's allowed, right? It's a part of the guidelines and the protocol. So you can donate. So you're going to donate that 10,000 from the family trust to your charitable trust, right? So that you can fulfill any type of nonprofit endeavors that you want. Now, it could be for-profit activity too, like buying businesses, getting stocks, crypto, things of that nature, okay? Buying real estate, all of that stuff, right? So now on the family trust level, right, we had 70,000 that came in, 60 went to operating expenses, 10 went to charitable contributions. That's the whole 70. We have 0 left, 0% tax liability. We're done paying taxes. Let's move on to the next trust. So the next trust is your tax exempt nonprofit trust. This is designated as what we call a 508c1a, which means that it's a mandatory exception for you not having to file for a 501c3. And the reason being is because of the separation between church and state. So because there's a separation, this type of entity can be set up for either educational reasons, religious reasons, or charitable reasons, okay? And so you can operate it like a church, a ministry, a school, however you want, okay? And so the money that's coming into this organization is labeled as a tithe, a gift, an offering, or a donation, okay? So anything that comes in and is labeled that way, you do not have to pay taxes on it on the federal level, okay? Now, if anything that's coming into the organization is labeled as income, then anything over $5,000, you would have to pay taxes on it. So it just depends on how you're labeling the money that's coming into this organization, okay? But this is the trust that I was telling you that as a W-2 employee, you can donate up to 60% of your income in there. So let's just say you're making 100,000, you can donate 60,000 into the tax exempt nonprofit trust, and then you're only going to pay taxes on 40,000, right? Which is extremely powerful, because now that's going to allow you to have money so that you're able to allocate that to assets, okay? So let's move on. Now that we understand structure, let's move on to the second pillar. So in the second pillar, we're going to be talking about OPM, other people's money, specifically the bank's money, okay? So what I want you to know is that your trust can actually build credit. It builds credit off of the EIN, just like a business or a corporation. So it's an identical process. And you want to be able to leverage a second credit profile, because a lot of us, we're so focused on our personal credit, but business credit allows you to get higher lines of credit. So on the personal side, if they're giving you a credit line of like 15 to 20,000, but on the business side, they're giving you a credit line of 150,000. So that is the type of situation you want to put yourself in, because you want to do what the banks do, right? So the banks are, they're getting rich off of using other people's money, right? And so you too want to do the same thing. You want to build wealth with using other people's money as well, and with using the bank's money. Okay, so they have the blueprint, right? And so just think about it from that standpoint, because it can allow you to invest. So now let's go to the third pillar, which is invest. And these are my two favorite assets, okay? So an index universal life insurance policy and real estate, okay? So When it comes to these assets, I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you how they connect with the trust, okay? So now, let's talk about the life insurance policies, okay? And I love life insurance, okay? So now when it comes to it, what you need to understand is that life insurance is designed to be used when you're living. It's not designed to be used when you're dead, right? So a lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they're dead. But if it was, then they would call it death insurance. So they call it life insurance for a reason, because there are a lot of living benefits, okay? So what are the living benefits, right? Well, with this type of policy, right? Remember I told you that it is an asset, okay? So the first thing that I need you to know is that it's tax-free, which is beautiful, right? We want to be able to reduce our tax liability, right? We don't want to constantly being taxed. We're taxed on everything. You go outside and breathe, and they're going to tax you for the air, okay? So with an IUL policy, it's tax-free, meaning that you're paying your premiums, and then when you're paying your premiums, right, you're going to be accumulating cash, and that cash is going to be accumulating tax-free, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it's protected, meaning that if somebody tries to sue you tomorrow personally, they cannot go after your life insurance policy. Okay, so these carriers, these insurance carriers are heavily regulated, and they will not allow any type of court system to come in and to take the money that you have in your cash in your life insurance policy. Okay, so that is another beautiful thing. Now, the third thing that I need you to know is that there's a death benefit associated with it, meaning that if you transition, right, so if your life ends, then there is a certain amount of money that is going to be paid out to your beneficiary, okay? So that could be $500,000, $1 million, right, 2 million, whatever it is. Now the next thing that I want you to know is that they're living benefits. So for example, let's just say that you become, let's just say that you were diagnosed with a critical illness, or let's just say you had a heart attack and you can't work, right? Depending on the carrier, they will give you up to 80 to 90%, just depending on the company, of your death benefit. So meaning that if my death benefit is $1 million and I have a heart attack, but I survive, but I can't work, right? I don't want to work, right? Then what's going to happen is they're going to cut you a check for $800,000, right? So that is super powerful, because now you don't have anything to worry about, right? Because a lot of people, they are worried because they know that there's a potential that they might outlive their Social Security and their 401k and their pension and things of that nature, right? And so you don't have to have that worry, right? And then the last component that I want to tell you is about the cash value, right? And so with this one, there's another account that is going to accumulate cash. Now, where's the cash coming from? It's obviously coming from you when you are paying your premiums. So let's just say that you structure your IUL to where you're paying $100 a month, right? And so now we structured it to where it's an 80-20 split, right? So 80% is going to your cash value and 20% is going to the cost of insurance, right? And so every single time that you're paying $100, $100 every single month, $80 is going to your cash value. So now your cash value is doing this, is accumulating. It's doing $80 and $80 and $80 and $80, right? Every time that you pay, every single month, okay? So now you're accumulating cash, which is a beautiful thing. And that's what we want. We want to accumulate cash, right? So that's a beautiful savings account. But now let's put this savings account on steroids. Okay, and so the way that we put it on steroids is because of this specific policy. So with this policy, you see it has the word index, right? And so the word index is referring to an indice, An index is a part of the stock market, right? So you have many different indices, right? You have the Dow Jones, you have the NASDAQ, you have the S&P 500. So let me give you an example regarding the S&P 500, right? So let's just say that the S&P 500 is doing 12%, right? What the insurance carrier is going to do, which I absolutely love and appreciate, is that they are going to mirror the S&P 500, and they're going to give you those returns. So that means that if the S&P 500 is doing 12%, whatever you have inside of your cash value, they're going to give you a 12% return on whatever you have inside of your cash value. Okay? So
Hey,
that's
Christina,
beautiful. Yes.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you up, but you have to be careful with that because I get what you're saying, and that's true. But some insurance carriers cap it. So if the S&P is doing 12, they might cap it at 9%. So like, got to keep that in mind.
Yes,
But
you're
you're
right.
right. You're right for the most.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. So it depends on, so he's right. It depends on the carrier. Okay, so there is a cap. Okay, it's not unlimited. So I was actually going there to where if the S&P 500 is doing if let's just say they do 20%, right? The life insurance company is not going to give you 20%. They cap it, right? And so they're going to give you 12, and then the whatever's left over, right? The 8, they keep it for themselves, okay? So that's the beautiful thing, because now let's just say that the market crashes, right? If the market crashes, right, if your money is invested inside of the market, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to lose it, right? You're going to go down with the market, right? But with this type of policy, the beautiful thing is that you can have a floor, meaning that if the market crashes, you're protected, right? And that there's a minimum that you can make, right? And it depends on the carrier, right? So I don't want you to think that all, cornflakes are the same, right? So it depends on the carrier, but some carriers, their floor, meaning the minimum that you would make in a down market, is 0.25. Some are 1, right? So it just depends. And so everyone's policy is not the same. So my policy is not the same as your policy, and it just depends on how it's packaged and structured and put together, okay? So now with that, now when it comes to life insurance, right? The way that you connect it with the trust is that the trust is going to be the owner of your life insurance policy. The trust is going to be the payer of the premiums, right? Those premiums that you're paying every single month. And the trust is also going to be the beneficiary, right? Because if anything happens to you, you are what we call the insured. If anything happens to you, then what's going to happen is the trust is devastated. The trust is suffering a loss, and the trust needs to be compensated for that loss. And so that death benefit, let's just say it's $1 million, that $1 million is going straight to the trust, right? Which is extremely powerful, right? That is what you want, right? Because that is what we call preservation of wealth, right? And that is where you are able to ensure that trust funds actually reach the second generation and even the third generation, right? And so that's why it's so vitally important for you to have these things in place, because a lot of us, we're not thinking, how we're going to preserve our wealth, right? We just, that's not even a thought sometimes, right? And so this is one way that you're able to do that, right? But the beautiful thing that I like about this policy is that with this policy, right, you get to put your money in a place where it's actually going to work for you. So unfortunately, a lot of us, we have to work for our money. And I'm here to tell you that you do not have to work for your money, right? So you have to put your money in a place to where the money is going to work, right? The money is going to work for more money, okay? So it's going to take a mindset shift for you to know and believe that you're able to like structure this, right? You're able to put this together, right? Now, this is not like something that you're going to get rich quick, right? This is not that, okay? This is the slow game. This is the secured game. This is the protected game, okay? This is where you know for sure that you are leading into financial freedom. You know for sure that you're leading into location freedom. You know for sure that you're leading into time freedom, right? So this is how you're able to buy back your time by parking your money in the right places, right? So now that's with the life insurance policies, okay? So now the next thing that I want to tell you is about real estate, okay? So when it comes to real estate, I absolutely love real estate. I have been in the industry for 11 years, okay? And that was the way that I was able to retire myself as a nurse. So when it comes to real estate, what I need you to know is that your trust can own real estate. Okay, so that means that it can take out a mortgage, it can take out a home equity line of credit, it can be the owner on deed, it can take out a second mortgage, whatever it is that it needs to do. Okay, so your trust is able to do that. Okay, so now that we know and understand this, how is it that we're going to put this together, right? So one, your trust has to be able to qualify for these financial products, right? These loans and mortgages and things like that. Okay, so you have to be able to provide bank statements, tax returns, things of that nature. Okay, but once the trust qualifies, then you're able to want to get a mortgage. So let's just say that you want to go ahead and purchase a property, right? A triplex, right? So when you're purchasing this triplex, right? This is the way that you want to do it. So the first thing is that with the triplex, you're going to get out a mortgage. Okay, so the specific type of mortgage is a DSCR. Okay, so that's for entities where you are buying property that's going to be non-owner occupied. Okay, so that means that we're going to put a tenant in there because you need to be able to put the trust in a position to where it's going to sustain itself. You're not going to be working your W-2 income job and then pouring money into the trust. That's not what we're doing, right? We're going to structure this so that the trust can actually put us in a position so that we can retire young. We can retire early, right? We can go ahead and take back our time, right? Your time is the most important thing, and it's the only thing that you do not get back, okay? So with that being said, it's vitally important that we put ourselves in these positions. And once again, it's you parking your money in places where it's going to grow. These are income producing assets, right? So when it comes to the real estate, right, the trust is going to take out a DSCR loan. Now that type of loan, they can lend you, so the banks or the mortgage companies, they can lend you up to 80% of the purchase price, okay, for that non-owner occupied triplex. So now that you have the 80%, you need to go get the 20% from somewhere else, right? So remember what we said. We said OPM, other people's money, meaning the bank's money, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to leverage our business credit that we're establishing with our trust, and we're going to go out and build that business credit, get the credit cards and the lines of credit that we need, okay? So with that being said, let's just say that you took the time and energy and you had the capacity to build business credit, right? And so now the business credit, you qualified for, $100,000 credit card, right? What you need to do is you need to liquidate that credit card. You need to liquidate it. And now that you liquidated the credit card, right, those funds are sitting inside of your bank account, okay? And so now the first thing that you want to do is, instead of you bringing those funds straight to the closing table, what you can do is you can park it somewhere else first. And so where you want to park it is in your index universal life insurance policy, okay? So depending on the way that you structure it, right, you're able to go ahead and put that money in there. So let's just say that, you're putting, I don't know, 50,000, right? So the only thing that you need left at the closing table is 50,000, right? So that 50,000 first, you're going to funnel that money into your index universal life insurance policy, okay? So that money's going to go there. Your cash value is now going to go up, right? And so now that your cash value is going to go up, remember that it's going to be earning compound interest. And it's earning this compound interest because it's mirroring the market, right? So remember, whatever it is, right? So let's just say the market is doing 9%, right? So depending on the way that it's structured, they'll give you 9%, right? So now that 50,000 is working for you in its first location, which is absolutely beautiful. The beautiful thing that I love about this type of policy is that instead of you going to a bank to get the loan for the down payment, you can go straight to your policy and you can get a policy loan, right? And so you need that money in order for you to use it for the down payment for the real estate, right? And so you're going to contact the carrier, let them know, hey, I want to do a policy loan, right? And so they're going to look at your cash value because you have to understand that this is an asset, right? And they look at it as collateral, right? And so they're going to look and see, okay, yeah, so she has cash in there. So let's go ahead and lend her 48,000, right? So they're obviously not going to liquidate your cash value. They're not going to lend you everything that's in there, right? And so what's going to happen is they will lend you 48,000, right? This is just an example. And with that, it's not coming from your policy. So it's not coming from your cash value, right? So your money is still sitting there, but what they're doing is they are lending you from their reserves, from their money, okay? Which is extremely powerful. So now what's going to happen is they do a direct deposit. That money goes straight into your bank account, right? And so now you get to go to the closing table with the money that you need, okay? So you got the 80% from the DSCR, and then you got the 20% from the credit card, right? And so now you just closed on a triplex with 100% financing, so 0% of your own money, okay? So I'm here to tell you, and this is because I have done this, right? I'm here to tell you that you can buy real estate without using your own money, right? So, so just keep that in mind because a lot of people think that, oh, I need to have money to make money. It's not true. No. I don't believe that at all, right? So like, for example, one of our clients, she just purchased a 400 and I think it was like close to 450, $450,000 property, and she left the closing table with $900. Okay, she didn't have to come to the closing table with anything. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so now let's get back to our example. Okay. So the trust owns the property, and now you just closed on a triplex. There's 3 doors. Let's just say every single tenant is paying you $2,000, right? So that's $6,000 is the first of the month is $6,000, right? That you're getting. So what you can do is you can put yourself in a position to where instead of you going and paying the mortgage and the credit card and utilities and all this stuff first, right? What you can do is you can pay yourself first. So you can put that money into your policy, right? Allow it to grow and then only take out what you need in order to cover the mortgage and the credit card, right? So then that $6,000 will go straight into your policy, right? And then you do a policy loan and you take out what you need to cover the rest of the expenses, okay? Because you want that money to not only accumulate, but to earn compound interest, right? That is the goal, is for your money to be in places to where it's going to grow. Every single dollar needs to go out and bring back a friend. Every single dollar needs to go out and bring back 10 cents, right? And so that is the type of mindset shift that we need to take. Why? Because society has programmed us to think the contrary. This is what society has told us, right? Society has groomed us into being institutionalized. Let's just keep it real, right? So remember, from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, you were where? Monday through Friday. You were in an institution, right? You was in an institution Monday through Friday from 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And so you did that, and then you had your weekends off, right? And then that was from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, right? And then you went to college and it was the same thing. And then after college, you got into your job or your career, right? And guess what? Same thing. So Monday through Friday, you're giving 40 hours away and you have the weekends to yourself, right? And so what is it that they want from you, right? So they want you to do this for the next 40 years, right? They want you to work 40 hours for 40 years until you're 65 years old. And then at 65, you get to retire. They want you to depend on Social Security for sure, right? And that is when you're expected at 65 years old. That is when you are expected to have time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. Now, I decided to unsubscribe from that system. I wasn't having it. And I remember the day that I decided that. So remember, rewind over a decade ago, right? I was a registered nurse. And it was one day at work in the hospital. I had a coworker, her name was Audrey. And so Audrey is 65 years old. And on this particular day, she was exhausted, she was tired. And so what I had to do was I had to take care of her patients and my patients, right? Because I'm this young, 24, I think I was 24 at the time, young 24-year-old girl that's like ripping and running the hallways, taking care of all these patients, right? I had like a cape on my back, right? They called me super nurse, right? So I'm taking care of her patients and my patients, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, Miss Audrey, when are you going to retire? You're 65 years old and you've done your 40 years. And when I'm telling you, at that time, she had been a nurse for 40 years. She did her time. So I'm like, you've been a nurse for 40 years. You're 65. When are you going to retire? And she's like, Christina, I'm not ready to retire. And I'm like, why? She said, I'm going to wait until I'm 67 and a half because Social Security is going to give me an extra $300. And I was like, what? I said, so you mean to tell me you're going to work for an extra 2.5 years for $300 more? You waiting for Social Security? And it was at that moment that I made the decision in my mind. I'm not going to be Miss Audrey. I'm not going to work as a nurse for 40 years. I'm not going to retire when I'm 65 years old. I'm not doing it. No. So I told myself at that moment in time, I said, I'll give myself 10 years to retire. That evening after our shift, Miss Audrey was driving outside of the employee parking lot and she hit the tree right in front of the emergency room and she died on impact. Miss Audrey never made it to retirement. So don't think that tomorrow is promised because it's not. It's time for us to get our affairs in order.
Wow.
So it's true. So I was able to retire myself at 31 years old. Don't have to work another day in my life. I have financial freedom, location freedom, time freedom. Nobody, like, I wake up with no alarm. Why? Because I made the decision when I was 24 years old to retire myself in 10 years, and I was able to do it in 8 years. Why? Because that next year I got into real estate. I set up a trust. I set up an LLC, a business, And I started buying income producing assets so that I could replace my income because I was tired of working. And it's crazy, you being young, right? You're young in your 20s. I'm tired of working because I'm working 12 hours. It's not sustainable. You think that it's sustainable to work 12 hours being on your feet? No, it's not. So sometimes it takes a mindset shift, right? It takes a mindset shift for us to be able to put ourselves in these better situations where we're able to build wealth efficiently and effectively, right? And I'm here to tell you that you setting up a trust, that you acquiring the assets necessary so that the trust can sustain itself and eventually retire you, that is what you want to do, right? And when it comes to these banks, right? A lot of people, they think that that the banks, that their largest, so when it comes to the banks, right? A lot of people think that the banks are getting rich off of like the mortgages, the credit cards, all that stuff, right? And we have to know and understand that every time that we get paid, right, that money is going straight to the bank. And we live in a fractional reserve system, right? So that money is not really there. There's only a fraction of the money that's there, right? And so the banks, they're getting rich off of the mortgages and the student loans and the credit cards, right? But their number one asset, right, class that they're holding is life insurance. So that, do you know how many hundreds of millions of dollars worth of life insurance policies that they have? So look it up. It's called BOLI, bank-owned life insurance, right? So now I'm telling you that the bank has the blueprint, right? So if the bank's number one asset class is life insurance, what do you think your number one asset class should be? Somebody need to come off me. Thank you. Exactly. Okay. Powerful. So just think about it from that standpoint, because like we have to be able to put ourselves in these positions, right? So exactly like what I said, right? Where you are building wealth efficiently and effectively, okay? So let's move on to the last slide here. Let's dive right back in. And then once again, I'll open up the floor for Q&A. So you need to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything, okay? So I love that statement. And I'll go ahead and say it again, because we need to put ourselves in a position to where we own nothing, but we control everything, right? Now, when you think about it, let's just say that you're thinking about your primary residence, right? So when you own nothing but control everything, that's stewardship. That means that you're a good steward of your assets, right? That means that you're managing them, you're administering, right? You're doing what you need to do operationally, right? Versus ownership. Ownership is when we bought into the lie, right? We bought into society's programming, right? And so society has programmed us to think that we need to be the proud owners of everything. Society has brought us to the point where they want us to be the proud owner of the house. They want us to be the proud owner of the car. They want us to be the proud owner of the bank account, right? But it's more powerful for you to control it than for you to own it, right? And so, for example, your primary residence, right? If you don't wake up tomorrow, that house is still going to be there. So if you think about it from that standpoint, the house is still going to be there. What you truly want is control over the house while you're living, not ownership. So don't be afraid to give up ownership to the trust, because at the end of the day, you're going to have full control over all of those assets. Everything, the cash, the money, the car, everything. So think about it from that standpoint. Now, when it comes to us transferring our wealth, right? We never even think to ourselves, how am I going to transfer this $1 million that I've been working so hard for the last 40 years? So the way that you transfer your wealth is this way. You set up a trust. When the trust is established, it's going to create 100 trust certificate units. Those 100 trust certificate units are just like stock certificates. So you know how stock certificates represent ownership in a corporation? Well, trust certificates represent beneficial interest in a trust. So with that being said, you are going to transfer the wealth through the TCUs. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to distribute those TCUs to your beneficiaries. So your beneficiaries are going to be your children or your next of kin or your spouse or whoever you want to receive ultimately the cash and the assets that are inside of the trust, okay? So remember, there's 100 trust certificate units. So let's just say that you are so generous and that you make me your beneficiary. So I'm one of your beneficiaries and you give me 25 TCUs, right, out of the 100. Well, let's just say that this trust has a net worth of $1 million. If the trust has a net worth of $1 million and I have 25 TCUs that represent 25% of beneficial interest, that means that my beneficial interest or the amount of TCUs that I have that I'm holding actually is equivalent to $250,000 at that point in time, okay? And so if the trust was terminated today, then that's the amount that I would receive, okay? So that's how you're going to transfer wealth by way of a trust certificate unit, okay? So now, when we are talking about wealth, right? How many times have we seen it to where you have wealthy families, right? That, and even individuals like actors, actresses, athletes, right? They come into this large amount of wealth and they either blow it in their lifetime or it's lost by the second and third generation, right? Like the stats are there, like 90% of the wealth is gone by the second and third generation. Why? Because they don't have the tools for preservation. What are the tools for preservation? The tools are a trust and life insurance. You need both of those two tools if you are going to be intentional about building generational wealth. Because I'm going to let you know right now that the money that you have just stacking up in your bank account, that money's not going to reach the second generation. And if it does, it's not going to make it to the third. So you cannot walk around here lying, saying that you're building generational wealth when you're not. The only thing that you're doing is making money. That's it. You're not building wealth because you are not structured to build wealth. Okay. You need a trust in order to be properly structured to build wealth. There's no way that it's going to last many generations into the future. But last time I checked, that's what you want. So then get the tools, right? So now when it comes to the trust and life insurance, right? So remember earlier I told you that the trust is going to be the payer of the premiums. The trust is going to be the owner of the policy. The trust is going to be the beneficiary of the policy, and you are going to be the insured, right? Now, the trust has many assets. The trust has a house, so it has homeowners insurance. The trust has a car, it has automobile insurance. The trust has a bank account, it has FDIC. So you are a human asset in the trust organization. So the trust is going to go ahead and insure everyone associated with the organization, meaning the trustees and the beneficiaries and the future beneficiaries, okay? Because if anything happens to you, that $1 million death benefit needs to go straight to the trust, right? And it replenishes the trust, right? And so, for example, let's just say that you have a baby that's born into the trust organization. That baby, that's what we call a trust fund baby, right? And so as long as that baby is born and breathing, right, within a couple of days, you can get a policy on that baby. Okay, and so now that you had the trust open up a policy on the baby, let's just say it's an index universal life insurance policy, right? So now that you have the trust open up a policy on that baby, what's going to happen is the trust is now going to pay the premiums every single month. So let's just say it's $100, right? So $100, $100, $100 every single month, right? And so this trust fund baby is going to grow up. Let's just say that this trust fund baby just celebrated their 18th birthday, right? And so now they need to get a set of Hot Wheels, right? So they need to get a car. They need to drive back and forth to campus. It's time to go to college, right? So on a normal basis, right, a normal 18-year-old will go to the dealership. They will pull their credit. They will get into a high interest automobile loan, right, with the dealership, and they will start paying $1,000 a month for a $30,000 car, right? That's the normal basis, right? But because this individual is a trust fund baby, they're able to go to the trust instead of having to go to the dealership, right, to get a loan. And so now they come to the trust, and what happens is they ask the trustee for a loan, right? And so the trustee says, okay, the loan is for what? A vehicle? Okay, no problem. So I'll write you a check for $30,000, and then you'll just pay the trust organization $300 a month. So now the check is cut, and that trust fund baby goes and buys their car. And so for the first year, they're paying $300 a month, $300 a month, right? Because we're not raising spendthrifts. That's what we're not doing, right? So they have to have some type of financial responsibility, okay? And so $300 a month, $300 a month. And let's just say one day that trust fund baby is like, I don't want to pay the trust anymore, right? Well, they defaulted on the loan. So obviously they're not going to get a loan in the future. But the second thing is that it's okay that they defaulted. And the reason being is because the loan did not originate from the trust. The loan originated from the life insurance policy of that trust fund baby. Because remember, that trust fund baby has been having a policy since they were a couple days old, right? And so now that policy has not only accumulated cash, but also that cash has been compounding, right, for the last 18 years. Okay, so that's where the $30,000 originated from. The $30,000 originated from their life insurance policy, okay? And the reason why it's okay for them to default on that loan is because the loan doesn't have to be paid back. It's not required to be paid back. It's just automatically going to be deducted from their death benefit, okay? So once that trust fund baby expires, right, once they transition, right, that $30,000 is deducted from their death benefit, and then whatever is left over, it goes straight to the beneficiary, which is the trust. So let's just say it was $3 million, right? $3 million minus the 30,000, whatever is left over, it goes straight into the trust fund. The trust is replenished. That is what preservation of wealth looks like. That is what conservation looks like. That is what you need to be implementing for your family. It's so vitally important. So if you're not structured like this, it's time to get restructured. Okay, so these are the books that I recommend. What Would the Rockefellers Do? It's a really good book that teaches you about the marriage between trust and life insurance. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2 teaches you about trusteeship, right? How to operate a trust. Family Wealth teaches you how to run your family like a business, right? So every single family needs to run like a business where your spouse is the CEO, your spouse is the CFO, your children are the secretaries and treasurers, right? So you have to think about it from that standpoint. And then the last one is the Complete Book of Trust, which teaches you about the different types of trust.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days. Don't own anything, control everything. That is the sentiment. It seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions, things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. This has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
All right. So what you guys need to do is you need to take action on the information that I shared with you guys tonight, because it could be your new way of doing business. It could be your new way of saving taxes. It could be your new way of protecting your assets, right? You don't want to think about this as like a small mom and pop shop. You want to think about your entire business and family organization like an Amazon or Facebook, right? So you want to take it seriously because it can change the trajectory of not only your life, but your children's life, right? So what I want to do is I want to give you guys the opportunity for us to be able to work together. So I do have a program that teaches you guys step by step how to go ahead and set up this entire structure, okay? And so I'm going to teach you how to set it up yourself so that you can learn trusteeship, so that you can learn how to operate a trust. Do you know, and I'm telling you, I've spoken to thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people that have trust already and that have never used their trust. They spent 20,000, 40,000, 50,000 on a trust, and that they're too afraid to use it. They don't know how to use it or operate it. They allow it to collect dust. Or remember, I told you about the mistakes earlier. They thought their house was in a trust. They thought their car was in a trust. They never even knew that they should get an EIN for a trust. And so they've been operating with their social. There's so many mistakes that I don't want you to make. And so I want to be able to teach you how to do this the right way, because this is an organization, right? This is not like, this is not something small. This is something that is you taking a journey that's going to take time, right? So you have two options here. So the first option is where you can do it yourself, and that is through our online course. The course has 43 video modules, and it comes with the 3 trusts that I mentioned in the previous slide, okay? So it comes with the business trust, the family trust, and the nonprofit trust, okay? So you get all 3 of those trusts. And in the video modules, you're going to learn step by step what's inside of the trust. It's so important for you to understand the concepts of the trust, right? So you need to know what's inside, the contents of the trust, so that you can operate efficiently and effectively, okay? There's no way for you to be able to get to your end goal or your desired destination without you doing it the right way. And I've been in this industry for 11 years, and I've seen everybody do it the wrong way, right? And so you don't want to be that person, right? So you get step-by-step instructions, right? But then we also educate you guys on every single paragraph. And just, if you hold on just a moment, I'm going to show you guys what a trust looks like, okay? So that you are able to put a mental note to what I've been explaining this whole evening. So you get lifetime access to the course. So in 2 years, if you need to go ahead and, make an amendment, or you need to go ahead and establish another trust entity, then you're able to do so, okay? It also comes with resources and ebooks. So for example, with the resources, we will provide you with everything that you need. So for example, if you need to file taxes, we provide you with a 1041 form. If you need to go ahead and transfer your primary residence, we provide you with the quitclaim deeds, right? If you need to be able to have board meetings, we provide you with the template so that you can have the board meetings. Do you know how many people are operating entities? And when I say people, I mean the business owners and entrepreneurs, right? Operating entities and never had a meeting for their business, right? And so we don't do that here. So proper documentation is so vitally important, and we teach you how to do it, right? So you get all of the resources that you need, and then you get ebooks too, right? Because I'm not your only educator here in the program, right? So there's other educators in the program that I'll tell you about in just a moment. And when it comes to the ebooks, right? Like some of those books that I mentioned, they cost like $700-800, right? But you get the electronic version inside of the program. We do also have a private Facebook community and a private Telegram chat, okay? So you will get access to those communities. So we have over 2,500 trustees in our community. Okay. And so you get access to these individuals. These are like-minded individuals that have already established their trust. They have been operating within trusteeship for the last 3, 4, 5 years, right? And so you get access to these individuals. These are not only like-minded individuals, but individuals that are in your city, in your state, okay? So that just becomes a game changer because you are interacting and networking with people who are just like you. They understand the mission. They're building a legacy. They're establishing a solid foundation, right? So let me ask you this question, right? If you're building a house, do you want to build that house on a soft foundation or do you want to build it on a solid foundation? And I know that all of you guys are going to say solid foundation. So you need to be able to make sure that you're doing everything correctly, right? So anyways, the course is only $997. And now your next option is Done With You. So Done With You is where you'll be able to not only get access to the lifetime access to the course, but you get access to our workshop. So our workshop is where we do it live together, okay? So you don't have to do it by yourself. I will hold your hand through this entire process, okay? And so the workshop is 1 week long. It's Monday through Friday from 11 in the morning to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So on Mondays, what happens is I will show you how to set up the business trust, okay? So we break down every single paragraph of the trust, and then I dive into Q&A where I'll be able to answer any and all of your questions, right? Tuesday, we set up the family trust, okay? So I'll go ahead and break down every single paragraph of the trust, and then I'll dive into Q&A to answer any and all of your questions. On Wednesday, we set up the nonprofit tax exempt trust, and then from there, I show you how to get your tax exempt EIN numbers and how to become ordained if you want to operate it as a ministry. And then we dive into Q&A. Thursday, we focus on OPM, other people's money, specifically the bank's money. So I'm going to show you how to get those EINs with the IRS so that you can open up your bank accounts. I'm going to give you a list of banks so that you know which financial institutions are the best ones that are not going to ask you for your trust documents and that you can go right in there and open up a bank account, okay? And then after that, we're gonna discuss banking procedures and operations. I'll show you how to have a board meeting, and then I'll show you how to execute promissory notes so that you are able to document how much you're going to fund the trust with. And then we have a funding manager, and our funding manager is one of our educators in the community that's going to come in and teach you step by step how to build business credit, how to get the business funding that you need in order for the trust to be able to acquire assets. Okay, so that's how you're going to intentionally build wealth. Okay, your trust needs to be able to acquire assets, but your trust needs OPM in order to acquire those assets. So we have a funding manager that comes in and is going to educate you step by step how to do it. Okay, now then we dive into Q&A, and then the last day is Friday. So on Friday, what we do is we focus on asset protection and trust taxes. So with asset protection, what happens is we do an inventory of our assets, right? So that we can know what we have and what we don't have, so that we can know what's going to stay inside of the trust, what cannot go inside of the trust. Not all of your assets can go inside of the trust, okay? So we got to talk about it. And then after that, what I'll do is I'll show you how to transfer your primary residence or houses or land or any type of real estate that you have. I'll show you how to transfer those vehicles by way of a bill of sale, and then I'll show you how to transfer your businesses, those LLCs and corporations that you have that you've been operating in your personal name. Well, we're going to do those amendments to those articles of organization, and we are going to get those LLCs into the business trust, okay? And then our CPA comes. And so our CPA is going to educate you step by step on how to fill out that 1041, all right? So that you can learn how to file taxes for the trust, right? And then he's going to answer all of your trust tax questions, or even if you have questions about LLCs, corporations, all that stuff, right? He's going to answer any and every question that you have. So we dive right into Q&A, right? And so you coming on to the workshop is going to be life-changing because you're going to be in a space where one, you're with like-minded individuals, but they're asking really good questions that you didn't know that you wanted to know. And then you get to learn more, right? That light bulb goes off and then you're like, okay, I'm really starting to get it. But then the most beautiful thing about the workshops is that we do them every 3 to 4 weeks and you get to attend for life, meaning that you have lifetime access to the workshops. That means that you can attend every single workshop that we do in the future. So our next workshop is July 6th to the 10th, right? So you get to go in July, August, September, October, November, December 2027. So you have lifetime access, which is beautiful, okay? So you are going to be held accountable by my team, right? And we're just going to ensure that everything is done the right way so that you have that confidence to know, yeah, I can operate as a trustee, right? And so the workshop is only $2,500, right? And so with this, you just have to think in your head that yes, you know, you have to take a leap of faith. Yes, it takes a commitment, but it's you being able to invest in yourself, right? But you being able to break those generational curses that's in the family, right? Because I know that everyone on the call is a generational curse breaker. Why? Because that's the only type of people that are attracted to me, to this call, right? To my YouTube channel, right? Is those people that are just like me. I was the generational curse breaker in my family, and so are you, right? And so it just takes that. So let me just show you one more video, and then we will go, I'll open up the floor for Q&A.
I just wanted to say another thing too. So she's 100% because I've been to probate and it's not fun. It's not fun and it's very costly. So what she's charging is pennies. I mean, I actually paid $5,000 for probate. And it took a whole year and a half for us to sell our house. And my husband was the only son that she had. So the house, you would think it would automatically go to him, and it didn't. We still had to go to probate, spend $5,000, go to probate, and we had to pay the mortgage for a whole year and a half. So it was a mess, I'm telling you. And she's only asking, what, $2,500 for the program? It is just not expensive at all. Trust me. It is a lot of information, so you have to be ready. Listen to the tutorials that she gives you because you could be prepared because it's a lot of information, but she's very thorough. And I appreciate you so, so much. And then I found out my husband, we did this a while ago, about 10 years ago. We spent $7,000 for an attorney and it was trash. What she said about it, putting your name and all that stuff on it, the guy was trash. And your program is not as thorough as an attorney as it's well worth it. I'm going to say that. So I'm just letting you guys know this girl is the real deal. I even called her office because I didn't believe she was the real deal. And she actually answered the phone. I was like, oh my God, she answered the phone. She said, people say that about me. I was like, because this is YouTube. You know, we think everything's a scam. Yeah. You answered the phone. I was like in shock. So that's it. That's what I want to say. Thank you so much again. I appreciate you. Thank you.
So let me quickly show you guys what the program looks like, and then I'm going to show you what a trust looks like. And then if you could raise your hand, I'll be able to answer all of your questions. So give me 2 seconds to show you this. Okay, so this is what the program looks like. So once you enroll into the program, it's called Wealthy Trustee Program, right? And that is because it's designed to put you in a position to become a wealthy trustee. Okay, so we're going to train you on trusteeship, and then we're also going to train you on wealth creation. Okay, so as I mentioned, after you go through the induction, the first thing you're going to go through is learning what a trust entity is. So 99% of people do not know what a trust is. Only the 1% know what a trust is. So it's time for you to become the 1%, okay? So with that being said, you're going to learn what a trust is and who the parties are involved, okay? So we call them the incorporators. So you have the grantors. Hold on 1 second. You have the, hold on 1 second, let's go back. 1 second. 1 second, it's asking me to log in. Okay. All right, let me share my screen here. Okay, so you learn who's the grantor, the trustees, the beneficiaries, the successors, the protectors, the benefits of a trust, the different types of trust. Then we teach you how to set up the nonprofit trust, how to set up the family trust, and how to set up the business trust. And then you learn about the tax strategies. So how to operate exempt, what distributable net income is, and how to avoid tax evasion, okay? And then you learn about asset protection. So taking an inventory of that asset and pretty much how to create the bank account for the trust, the brokerage account for the trust, how to transfer your house, your car, your insurance policies, your businesses, right? How to have board meetings. And then we go into wealth creation where you learn how to build business credit, right? So that you're able to acquire the assets and get the funding, right? How to invest in the market and how to do the infinite banking with the life insurance policies. We teach you about the legacy crest, and then you have all of your resources and your ebooks available. So this is what a trust looks like, right? So it obviously looks like a contract, right? And so everything that you see in red is what is customized, okay? So that means that you are going to be tailoring those things to your business or to your family, okay? So I want to be able to open up the floor to answer any questions that you guys might have based off of the information that I went over tonight. So I see Kevin has a question. Hey, Kevin, how are you? You're on mute.
Hey, Christina. Thank you for all of this very good information. First
Thank
off.
you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here and staying from the beginning to the end.
Oh yeah, yeah. The question that I have is that I'm the owner of a business, and I know that I will learn in the modules, how to structure and how to do everything. But is there like a way to do it proper? I mean, I know you're doing it properly, but is it a step-by-step way of doing it if you already have a business? I don't own, I rent. So like I just want to know the insurance policy. When do I get that? Do I get the trust before the IUL? Or, do I put the LLC in the trust? So I'm wondering the steps that it's, in order to make
Yeah,
sure that I'm doing
absolutely.
it correctly. And I know it's in
Yeah,
the module, so that was
it
just my
is.
question.
Yeah, so if you follow it from beginning to end, that's the steps that we want you to
Okay.
take. We want you to go down that route. So typically we'll tell you to set up the trust first and then the life insurance policies, but sometimes people want to do it the other way around because tomorrow's not promised. So if you don't wake up tomorrow, you already have your policy intact, which is a good thing, right? So now if you set up your trust first, then the trust is going to take out the policy on you, right? And so when we do the application for you, then what we do is we put the trust as the owner, the payer, and the beneficiary. But if you set up your policy first, it's okay because we'll just contact the carrier for you and we'll let them know, hey, he needs to update his paperwork, right? And so you'll update the carrier, and usually it's like 2 to 3 pages. It's not long at all. And so you're just going to update who the owner is, who's paying the premiums every single month, and who the beneficiary is. Okay. So we recommend that you make the trust the owner, the payer, and the beneficiary, and you be the insured. Now, remember what I said earlier. You don't have to be the only insured, right? It could be your children too. It could be your children. If you have a spouse, it could be your spouse if that's your co-trustee. So whoever is a part of the trust. Now, when it comes to when it comes to like the life insurance, that's going to be with the family trust, okay? So that's more on the personal side. So the way that we educate you is for you to do it simultaneously. So meaning that you're structuring three different types of trust, right? And so some people, they don't have the capacity to do all three at once. Some do, right? So you'll start with the business trust, you'll set it up, be done. Start with the family trust, set it up. Start with then the nonprofit charitable trust, and then be done. And then you'll start operating, right? So now when it comes with the business, right? So when you're saying which one's first, second, and third, these are two separate entities. Your business trust and your family trust are two separate entities. So you're
With
going
with
to
with different EIN numbers,
EINs,
correct?
yes, yes, different EINs, different bank accounts. You need to treat them separately. They're not the same. You're not going to be commingling funds or anything like that. So we teach you the proper way of doing it. So the business trust is going to be the one that owns your LLC, right? And so there's no first, second, or third way of doing it. It just depends on, because your situation is different from mine, right? It's like, what do you want to protect first, right? Do you want to protect the business or do you want to protect the primary residence, right? If you don't have the capacity to do it simultaneously, but if you do, then good. Because, for example, if you're going to go open up a bank account for the trust, do you want to go to the bank 3 separate times, or do you want to go once and say, hey, I have 3 irrevocable trusts that I want to go ahead and open up a bank account for, right?
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. So, but we do have a checklist, and we do provide you with a lot of support and guidance. So I have a whole team behind me. It's not just me. Okay. So once you get into the program, you'll be able to meet the other educators. You'll be able to meet the team too. So they're gonna hold you accountable, my staff.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much. I appreciate you
You're
being
welcome.
here this evening. Next we have Stella. Hi, Miss Stella. How are you?
I'm good. Good evening. So
Yes,
I would
we.
like to say thank you for the information section. It's really super comprehensive, very, very informative. I can say that I've been in the space a little, even though not really so much. I've not gotten so much information. I've been trying to get a trust for over a year now. Since I got my home like a year and 4 months ago, I've been trying to set up a trust, it's not really I've not it's not been able for me I've not been able for me to set up one. In fact, today before I attended the program, they said to me you should call the county taxes. I did. They said call acquisition. I was like calling all over the place, and they said to me you have to go meet a real property attorney. And I'm with some people that claim to to be able to set it up for me. I'm in state of Maryland, and I'm a licensed life and health insurance. And by
Uh-huh.
that, I have insurance policy for myself and I have for my 2 kids. I wanted to set up one and be able to add my home and those things. And it's not really, I've never heard about trust the way you talked about it. Though I was working, I've talked about the types of trust, how you set it up, and what you're supposed to do. And by virtue of that, I want to be part of the program. Now,
Oh,
my question is,
yes, ma'am.
if you want to sign up for the program, you talked about the training, though it's a bit confusing. You talked about the workshop. If you sign
Yes.
up for the workshop, does it mean you are now a member of the part of the program?
Yes, you are. You're a part of the program. And so what I just showed you, you get a lifetime access to the program, but you also get the ability to attend the live trainings. So not everyone gets the ability to attend the live trainings. So that's why we have the two options there, because you either do it by yourself through the program, or you will do it with us through the live training, but you still get access to the program. So you get everything.
When you say doing it by yourself through the program, it's a bit confusing. How do you do it by yourself? Because you're already in the program. and you don't
Yeah,
know what to do.
so it's independent, meaning that you are going to log into the course, you are going to download the templates, you're going to watch the step-by-step trainings where we show you how to set it up, and you're going to set it up yourself.
Okay. So what
Yes.
if I just want to get a trust done for you by your organization? Is there
Yeah.
any plan like that for now?
No,
Okay, so
no.
I must be in the program to get
Yeah.
all the benefits. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. So yeah, exactly, yeah. And so we want to empower you so that you're able to set it up yourself. A lot of people who have trust don't know how to use it, don't know how to operate it at all,
okay.
or have been operating incorrectly. So we want
Mm-hmm.
to go above and beyond to teach you about trusteeship. This is how you operate it. This is how you have a board meeting. This is how you open up a bank account. So, for
Okay.
example, if you go to another firm, they'll just give you a stack of papers and say, have a nice day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the pressure, and you're feeling lost, and you're feeling confused, and you don't know what the next steps are. And
Exactly, and that's
you
what
don't
I've
even
been.
know how to use this stack of papers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you
and
also
you
teach
and
about
you're afraid.
LLC.
Yes, you're
Okay.
afraid, you're intimidated. It doesn't come
Mm.
with, with instructions. It's just like the same thing with the LLC, right? You went to the Secretary of State, you set up the LLC, and then what? Now I have to figure out how to be a business owner. That's why most businesses
Hmm.
fail, right?
Yes,
Because no one taught them the way. No one taught them how to
exactly.
operate as a CEO, how to structure their business the right way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we don't want you to fail. And that's why we have an entire community of people who
Okay.
have succeeded. So you have
Okay.
a support system.
Okay. Okay, no problem. So we have to be in the do you have some sort of deadlines, and do you have a payment plan?
Yes, we do. We have payment plans. So if you want to do the do it yourself is 3 payments of $359. And if you want to do the workshop, it's 5 payments of $549. And if you want to create your own custom payment plan, you can. So another thing is what I want to do is I actually want to offer a 20% discount for those people who are willing to take action in the next 24 hours. So meaning by this time tomorrow, right? If you enroll into the program, then we'll slash off the price by 20%. So instead of paying 2,500, you'll pay 2,000, right? So that's and so Kevin said he's in. Awesome. So you guys are able to use the discount code TRUST20 at checkout. Now, our website is inside of the chat, but I will tell you it's www.wealthytrustee.com. So you're able to enroll that way, okay? So those are for my action takers, the people that are ready to go. They know that they want to get properly structured, and they know that they want to protect their assets and have that legacy that's going to outlive them. Another thing is if you guys cannot pay in full, or if you want to roll into a payment plan, then what you can do is you can put a deposit down so that you can secure the 20%. So if you don't have the means to pay in full, but you still want the 20%, put the deposit. So the deposit link is also inside of the chat. So thank you, Miss Stella. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, you have not really explained the plans. You talked about the 2,500, which is the full and then you talked about the 900. Okay, I see here, I first of all see 997, a one-time payment with lifetime access. And then a 359, 3 months. Okay, that's the payment towards the 997, right?
Yes, 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 yes. So you can either choose what we have on the website. If that doesn't work for you, then my team will be able to create a custom one based off of what you share with us.
Okay, so when will I talk to your team? Because you're giving 24 hours to.
Yeah, so you can talk to them now. So go ahead. So the number is, do you see the number inside of the chat?
I'm searching for it. I didn't see the number. You sent it earlier.
So my assistant, she's gonna go ahead and put it inside of the chat.
Okay, so I would
So,
like to call so that I'll be clear and know the program I
yeah,
want to really
yeah,
do.
absolutely, yeah. So as soon as we get off, she's gonna be able to answer the phone and she'll get you all squared away with a custom payment plan.
Okay. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. I appreciate.
I appreciate
Okay.
you, Ms. Bella. So welcome to the community, and I'm so glad that you decided to take that leap of faith. So thank you so much for being here this evening and adding so much value.
Thank you. Have a
You're
good
welcome.
one.
You
The
too.
number. Okay, I've seen the number.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. All right, and who's next?
I have a
Let me see.
question.
Oh yes, go, Miss Linda.
Okay, this is my question. So if I start off saying, okay, I'm going to try to do it myself, and I said, okay, this is too much for me, and then I want to change over to the next program, will I be able to do that?
Yes, and all you have to do is just pay the difference. So you can upgrade at any point in time.
Okay, because I said maybe I'm going to try it myself.
Yeah.
But if
Uh-huh.
that
And do
is too
you,
overwhelming,
yeah.
then I want to change.
Yes, ma'am.
But
And a lot of community members end up doing that. So they sign up for the course, but they're like, hey, I need accountability or I need guidance or I need clarity. So they upgrade to the workshops so that we can do it live together and you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait, to get your questions answered because we're doing it together. And so you don't
okay,
have to write an email or a text message or go into the group chat. You can just ask your question live on Zoom. So it's very advantageous.
okay. And the dates that you have set up for July, what if those dates does not work for me? Will I be able to, the July the 6th, will it be another session?
Yeah, so we only do them every 3 weeks. So that's the one that's coming up, and then you would have to
Okay,
do the one in August. But all of the workshops are recorded.
okay,
So you are able to watch the recordings. And then we will be able to help you, get caught up. So we have staff members that are dedicated to you so that you are able to, we don't want you to be stuck. So we help you get unstuck. So if you miss the session, so because sometimes people, are not able to attend all 5 days, or maybe they missed an hour or two because of work. And so we will, help you get caught up.
okay. Now, a while ago, I think Miss Stella asked a question about you guys doing it for her. I just got an email or something says done for you, 7,500. So maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
what she's talking about from
Oh,
Miss
yes,
Stella.
yes, yes. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
So as of right now, that option is not available, but if you get into the community, then you're able to upgrade. But we're not offering it to new people. It's only to our community members that want to upgrade.
Okay. And do we get the 20% off of the $997 one as well? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank
Yes.
you very much.
You're so welcome, Miss Linda. Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening. Let me see here. I'm looking inside of the chat for any questions. So someone said that their uncle passed away and is going through probate for 5 years. Exactly. And that's detrimental. And you don't want to do a disservice to your family. You don't want to drag them through the probate process because sometimes it can take years. So you want to be able to make sure that your children receive their inheritance. Yeah. Let me see. Mr. Shaw said the Rockefeller method. What would the Rockefellers do? Yes, that's a really good book. Yeah, it really is. And it shows you the blueprint, right? So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? If these established things work, right? And if it was proven to be successful for other people or other families or other businesses, just know that you are also able to accomplish it as well. Okay. So, are you able to help us structure for special needs? Yes. So so we will provide the special needs provisions for you so that you can place them inside of your trust. So yes, that is something that is very common. The next question is, I adopted my niece who gets an adoption subsidy until 18 and also special needs and is able to have one of these trusts set up for the IUL policy so that they don't lose their long-term care. So yeah, so they can definitely have their own trust. So we call it a sub-trust of the family trust. So you'll set up your family trust, you'll put the special needs provisions inside of the family trust, and then you will establish a sub-trust for your niece. So we will show you how to do that. And let me see. Okay, it looks like to secure the 2,000 price, how do you place the deposit? So the link that you see inside of the chat is how you will place your deposit. All right. And let me see if there's any other questions. No. Okay. All right, you guys. So that is it for this webinar then. So I just wanted you guys to know that one, we can help you set up the life insurance policy. So I do have a life insurance agency and I am licensed. And then we will be able to help you set up the trust, right? So that you are able to establish this legacy, right? And the most important thing, one, is to take action because you're going to be changing the trajectory of your kids' life. So it's not only your life, right? We think that it's just impacting us, but no, you're impacting your children's children because now your children or your grandchildren, you're going to be raising them, right? So right now they'll be beneficiaries, but they're your future successors, right? And so they're going to be future trustees. And so you're going to be raising them as and nurturing them as trustees, right? Which is very powerful. So just take action on the information. iPhone has a question.
Hey, Christina, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Uh, um, so my question was, I'm gonna join and I'll kind of miss the difference between the two packages. I know one is a do-it-yourself, and the one is basically you hold my hand and walk me through it.
Yes.
So that's I was just trying to figure out what's the extra benefit of the do it with me package is one of my questions. But the other question was like we talked about when you gave the example earlier about the business trust and amending the articles and all that stuff to do it. My question is, so if my business, my LLC, it generates the $100,000, right? How do my business trust get those funds if my business trust is just the holding company?
How does your business trust receive the funds?
Correct.
So the business trust is the owner of the LLC, and the LLC does a K-1 distribution to the business trust.
Okay, because I was like, okay, that answered the question. It does a distribution
Good
to the
question.
trust, right?
Yeah, good
Yes.
question, brother.
Okay, because my first mind was, and I know the name of the game is to avoid paying as much taxes as possible. So that's what I was curious because I'm like, okay, the business generated the income, which means the business has got to be taxed somewhere. But if it's all done through the contribution or distribution to the trust, then it's tax free. But okay, that
It
was my
is.
question.
Exactly, yeah. So that's why we have a CPA in our program, and that is your go-to person for all of your tax questions. So thank you for asking that very valuable question. So you do learn that inside of the program, we do have an educator with over a decade of experience that's going to teach you step by step. So your original question was doing it yourself versus doing it live is a big difference. It's night and day. Okay.
Okay.
So doing it yourself means it's independent, it's just you, right? Doing it with the community is different because I'm showing you live. I'm in person, right? I'm in person live. showing you step by step, this is how you do it. I'm providing clarity, I'm providing examples, I'm breaking down every single paragraph so that you can understand, right? And then it's helping you retain the information more, right? And so sometimes as the week goes by, right, the light bulb goes off and you start connecting all of the dots. So your experience is totally different from you doing it by yourself versus doing it with a group, just like how we're in a group now, and you're feeding off of each other. Kevin just said to you, good question, right? So you're feeding off of each other, right? So the environment that we cultivate for you guys is on another level, but then it's not only me, right? It's other educators that come in. And so you get to connect the dots all at once right here live in the workshop versus you watching a training video and then going to work and then eating lunch and then not and then picking it back up a week later. It's a different experience. And so the most valuable component is not only what you learn, it's not only who you learn it from, right? Which is our licensed professionals, but it's also that you get the accountability. Okay, so we ensure that you are going to actually get everything done. We have dedicated team members that are going to be calling you on the phone, like, "Hey, did you get it done?" Right? So it's a different experience, and that's why the price point is different, but it's not really that much, right? Like $1,000 versus 2,500 is not really
Oh
that
no,
much.
the $2,500. It ain't. I mean, when you sit there, if any of us go to an attorney and ask them, "Hey, build us a trust," one, they're going to try to make it revocable. They all try to do that, and I know the reason why they do it is because anytime they know you're going to want to try to change it, and every time you change it, they're going to charge you. But I mean, just for them to do it, it's $3,000, and that's at the early stages. And if you find somebody to do it at that reasonable price, so this workshop is definitely worth it. I heard your CPA before. I watched the video, and that brother is sharp.
Very. As a knife.
uh,
As a
yeah,
knife.
yeah. And so I must, and like you said, I'm just gonna reflect real quick. You guys gotta definitely get that what the Rockefellers do book. Like Gary Gunderson, I mean that he's the reason I even found you, because
Yeah.
I started out with the life insurance policies. Then I started like, okay, I need to protect all this. And then I
Yeah.
found your stuff, your YouTube page, and I'm like, oh my god. So and now I'm actually in insurance because of him, because of how much I learned and all that stuff. But so yeah, I'm definitely joining the program. I was just curious about that. You answered the questions. I'm good. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Wait, what's your name? Because it says iPhone.
I know it said Mr. Shaw on the other one because I was on my other phone, but my name is Lennis.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, okay, okay, Mr. Shaw. It was nice meeting you. Thank you so much for
Thank
being here.
you.
You stayed the whole two hours. We've been here for 2 hours and 40
Oh
minutes.
yeah.
See,
Oh yeah.
listen, when you talking about juicy stuff like this, it's like a block party. So that's how our workshops are too. So our workshops are like a block party. Like once we get into this Q&A session, we get to get familiar with one another, and it's really nice. So let me see if there's any other questions in the chat, but I just appreciate all of you guys being here, and I appreciate you just taking this information. You don't have to take my word for it. You can go and do your due diligence and your research. I'm just a trustee that has been doing this for over a decade, and that I want to teach you from that standpoint because I've just seen too many mistakes, and I've seen too many families lose everything. So I don't want that to happen to you. And thank God I haven't personally been in that position, and that's because I had someone guiding me when I was 25. So, iPhone, you have your hand up? There's a couple different iPhones.
Yes, hi, Christina. Thank
Hi.
you so much. My name is Vin. I
Hi,
was
Vin.
wondering, do all the classes start at the same time? I know you said from 11 to 2, so each group is going to be that same time each month, or does
Yes.
it vary?
Yes, it's always 11 to 2 as of right now. So back in the
Okay.
day, they used to be 7 to 9, but now it's 11 to 2. So I'm not sure what the future holds if we're going to do evenings. But as of right now, every single workshop that you would attend is 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's Monday through Friday. So every single day we start at 11.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome. All right, so I don't see any other questions. So I just want to say thank you so much and just take action on the information. All of you guys are future trustees, and I want you to feel empowered and encouraged and know that you too are able to do this. So build that solid foundation and leave a lasting legacy for your family, because it's not what you leave, meaning the material things like the house and the cash, but it's the legacy that you leave, which is a totally different story. So God bless you guys so much. Let me see. I think is there any last questions? I see another hand and I see another question. Go for it.
Real quick, sorry. Since I had to jump on my other phone, I don't see the chat anymore. So am I able to get can I see, if I go to the website, can I see the payment plans and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you go to wealthytrustee.com, everything is available on the website.
Okay, thank you.
You're so welcome. It says, we appreciate you as well. If we encounter any hiccups with registering online for the workshop, can we call your assistant? Absolutely. So the number to call is 305-749-9215. So a member of my team, they'll be able to answer. And if they don't answer because it's outside of office hours, they will call you right back. Okay. So if you guys, if you need help right now, a member of my team is going to be available for like probably the next 15 minutes or so. And then we'll be back open tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Can you throw the number in the chat? Yes.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Yes, so I just want you guys to know that I appreciate you being here this evening and staying for 2 hours and 45 minutes. So, thank you so much. And I want you to know that we're live streaming on YouTube, so you can send the replay to any of your family members or friends that didn't get the opportunity to attend live. So let me go ahead and put the replay link inside of the chat. 1 second here. Okay. Let's get to the chat. All right, so I just posted the replay link. So you can forward that link to your friends or your family that missed this session and that you want them to know this information you feel like is vital and that they would benefit from it. After I get through the program, I definitely plan on becoming an affiliate. Absolutely. We do have an affiliate program. So if you guys want to refer any friends or family and they end up enrolling into the program, we give you 20% commission. So thank you guys so much for just helping us grow the community, because when I tell you, when you enroll into the program, and you get access to our private community, you're gonna see like these are your lost long brothers and sisters. Like they are just like you, they are just like me. So these are like-minded individuals, and we're all heading in the right direction, and we're all doing this journey together. We're on the same path. So with that being said, you guys have a good evening. God bless you. Love you so much. And I look forward to welcoming you into the program. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.